Hey guys, here we are going to go into round 2 of the Kell Brook versus Errol Spence film study, comparing them as fighters against, not exactly similar opponents, but looking for similarities in the way that they treated the fight and they would fight, based on the patterns that they exhibit during their most recent fights or more recent fights. One thing I forgot to talk about in round 1, because I was comparing how Errol Spence seemed to react to the kinds of things that Kell Brook was doing against Algieri, was Kell Brook's his lack of control and his lack of blueprint for setting up his offense. Right? If he's building a house, what way is he going about it? And a lot of times he would give like some subtle head movement or whatever, and then he would just throw a jab. He would move in and out and throw the jab, right? So it's like, mildly safe, safe, quote unquote. But he wasn't feinting or probing with the jab or establishing like lead hand dominance. And I don't want to say selling out exactly to throw the punch, but he would use a full and committed punch to look for openings against his opponent, right? And he would do the same thing with the straight right hand. He would just lunge in and throw it, and he's fast. He would land it against Frankie Gavin. That may not be the case against Errol Spence. Errol Spence usually likes to keep a little more distance between himself and the other fighter when he's not the one punching. But he wasn't really setting his shots up exactly, right? He was using that very Floyd Mayweather style of relying on your speed to be the inhibitor for your offense, right? And people talk about, oh, he's fast and he does this, like Floyd Mayweather's fast. That's one of the reasons why he got away with all of the things that he did to set his offense up, right? The pull counter or the leaping left hook, although he did set that up with a jab to the body, so you never know which one's coming. So it's kind of set up, but he's still setting punches up with committed punches, right? And it's always a dangerous proposition, as you saw like when Mayweather did it. Even someone as fantastically athletic as Mayweather, when he fought Pacquiao and in the 4th round, he threw a jab at him, Pacquiao caught it and countered with a straight left, right? That's the reason why you need to feint, why you need to probe, so you can, if your opponent's going to counter you, you can bait the counter out. You can gauge what they're going to do. You can get in their head and figure out what their game plan is when you do A or when you do B or when you do C. And that's going to stop you from walking into traps. That's going to stop you from walking into counters. It's going to stop you from putting yourself needlessly in danger. And that's going to be something that Errol Spence is going to have to work on as well, especially if he's fighting Kell Brook, who likes to counterpunch. And we saw it in round 1, him attempting to counterpunch or counter his opponent's jabs a lot, or baiting counters, right? He would jab, take a step back, and then jab, counter Frankie Gavin's jab. But for the most part, aside from setting that trap, which is good, he's still using that punch to set up another punch. You want to usually find a way to do that without committing to your offense, right? And as far as defense, Kell Brook showed that he uses like control of his opponent mostly for defense. Also, like very Mayweather-esque, right? Aside from the video that my friend showed me by Lee Wiley with the Mayweather control, where he puts it in the guy's arm or he puts it in his neck or whatever, and stops his opponent from like clinching with him, and then punching him in the head. Most of the time, Mayweather uses his control to stop you from landing punches, and uses his athleticism to land his own. But anyway, I talked again for like 5 freaking minutes before the round even started. So let's go ahead and get into this. Again, Kell Brook not really setting his punches up, but using athleticism to land them, which is not good. That's never good. Here he is, actually coming out with a little bit of probing, right? Hand control, establishing that his hand is going to be on top, right? Not like super committed to it, and then catching him with a jab when Gavin puts his own hand down. But using an active guard, you know, that's really important for making sure that your opponent doesn't know where your head's going to be. Like right here, just look at this, like dips down right here, brings his head up, touches his gloves, and then throws a punch, right? Some like really simple stuff, right? Moves to the right, down, up again, and then goes to throw a punch. And doing all of that stuff helps hide the fact that you're going to throw a punch, because they might think, oh, you're just going to move out and lean to your left, but now you throw a jab, right? Or you lean to your right, right? And then you might be throwing a left hook, or, sorry, I won't do that again. But yeah, those subtle movements can stop the telegraphing of your punches. Again, and now we have Frankie Gavin coming in, throws a 1-2, right? And one thing that Chris Algieri did a lot of, and this is probably what put him in such terrible trouble, is he would try to duck the left hand. Algieri, he would try to get under it, and then that allowed Spence to get on top of him and hold him down. Let's see what he's even doing to... Oh, so it's exactly like Errol Spence's fake jab, throw a left hand. But Kell Brook sees it coming, takes a step back and catches it. Again, now he's going more into touching his glove, using hand control to set his punches up, and turning into starting to build that house, you know, starting to use the tools that he has, but use real boxing skill to set his punches up. So here he goes, touches his glove, really classic, and then shuffles forward. Ooh, and he gets caught with a counter. You know, really interesting, because when I watched this fight live, I didn't even notice it. But there he is, touches his glove, jabs over it off the control, right, and then gets countered. Comes in, throws his hook, and now he's closed all this distance, and now he's in superior position, and Frankie Gavin does something really smart. He pivots off of it, right? So rather than stay in that position, right, and what Chris Algieri would do is he would wind up ducking down like this and try to back out the other side. He dips down and he kind of shoots out the other way. And notice how he gets away from all the punches, right? I don't even think that little uppercut on the inside lands. But anyway, again, just kind of jumping in with his left hand. Boom. Doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But look at how he shifts in right here. And then he goes to controls his head to stop him from landing any offense. That's really smart. And it's really clever how he uses that shift to close the distance. Like I said, I think Frankie Gavin is, he's trying to counterpunch with Kell. So I think eventually he's going to pick up on the fact that the body shot's open, and he's going to realize that Kell is not just throwing a straight right, that he always kind of comes in with it. But Kell does something interesting later on in the fight with that movement as well. But anyway, oh yeah, right here. So this is interesting. So he throws a jab, Gavin gets under it, and then throws a body shot. You know, his elbow kind of, I don't know if it exactly pushes the body shot down and then it just lands on the trunks. I mean, the trunks might be a little high anyway. He does kind of get in the way of that body shot, so good for Kell for kind of blocking it, even though it still gets in. But that move right there, that's exactly what... oh, yeah, beautiful, too. You can see it when he jabs. Look at his foot now, Kell Brook. He steps inside with the jab, and he's able to land the body shot off of that. That's going to be something that Kell Brook is going to need to do all night to keep... Or Errol Spence is going to need to do all night to keep Kell Brook off of him, and keep him from being the one to set up his offense. I talked about this. I'm not sure what video I talked about this in, but whenever you're the one that's leading, you're the one that's going to get to look for holes in your opponent's defense, right? And nobody sits in front of the punching bag practicing their defense, right? Nobody sits there and be like, oh, ooh, I got this hole right here, you know, and they just sit there for 3 straight minutes practicing their defense. No, they sit on the punching bag and they practice their offense, looking while the bag spins or while they push it, timing the bag as it comes in. They're punching it, you know, so it's much easier and people are much more trained to look for openings as they're punching rather than when they're being punched at. Now, with that part of it aside, you have a huge advantage being the the fighter that you're being the one that's making your opponent react, because later on in the fight, like say you get tired, your opponent might not know a lot about your defense, right? And now they're going to have to basically start from round one, or from, you know, however much experience they've had leading when you let them throw punches at you, basically like, well, philosophically from round one, because they haven't led into you yet. They haven't gotten to like throw a jab and see that you're open for this punch, or, you know, feint this and see how you react to it. Because if they don't get a lot of those opportunities early, they're not going to have that information later, right? So they have to start over, or they're basically at the beginning of that race. Anyway, moving on. Errol Spence is going to have to use this technique, you know, at the body shot, and he has great body work, man. Like really, really good body work. Oh, and also, he gets hit with his body shot, right? And look at the direction that he shoots out, Kell Brook. That's going to be something that he really needs to avoid. And this stems from the fact that he's he's right-handed, right? He comes in this way, and then you naturally move out to your left as you circle, right? And that's going to be a problem. That's the problem that Algieri had. Algieri had that terrible problem when he would always try to circle out to his left, and this is the opportunity right here where Errol Spence is going to, after landing that body shot, or after missing, or after it gets blocked, or after whatever, when Kell Brook circles out like this without controlling his opponent, right, or without a jab, or without a punch, Errol Spence is going to be able to land that right hook to the body that he was landing on Algieri. So that's going to be something that he needs to work on, choosing his direction. Right there, really good. He throws a jab, and then in between his punches, right? I don't know how Frankie Gavin misses his second punch, but he throws the first one, doesn't quite land, then eats a jab kind of thing. It actually kind of looks like did he elbow him in the face? I don't know, man. No, he hits him with the glove, but he catches him with the counter, just really, really sharp with the counter right there. Touches gloves, catches him with the counter, and that's going to be something that's really interesting, because Errol Spence likes to throw the double jab, but he doesn't throw the first jab as a punch. He basically puts his hand out, touches your glove, and then pulls it back and throws a second jab as he uses his hand to like kind of balance, right, so that he can kind of step forward, like get the double step and get the lead foot dominance. And it appears that Frankie Gavin has lead foot dominance right now, and he just got caught with that punch. But what we learned from the Errol Spence fight is that when he gets countered in the middle of that combination, he kind of just shuts down and tries not to get hit. And that's going to stop him from being able to land his offense against Kell Brook, because Kell Brook's going to be countering that first jab or that second jab every single time. And then Kell Brook does something really good, right? When his opponent has lead foot dominance, catches him with the jab, right? And then when he doesn't get over his arm, he gets under and just grabs him right away. And see how he has his arm around him, right? Because he's in a poor position, right? His opponent has lead foot dominance on him. But now he grabs his arm around him to control him, to stop him from sliding out that way and making it to the new boxing line, right? But also, he's holding his left hand, right? And that's really key. So that, because Errol Spence likes to fight on the inside right here. This is exactly where Errol Spence likes to fight. Another good thing that Kell Brook is doing right here is he's putting his hand, or his head, on his left hand, right, or his left shoulder. Whereas if it was on his right shoulder, which I think was something that Algieri was doing, Errol Spence can just bring his hand up and move his own head back and throw left hands upward, right? Whereas this way, he's almost completely guarded from the left hand. So this is going to be exactly what Kell Brook needs to do all night long, as this was one of the most efficient and effective ways that Errol Spence had to set up his offense, was off the double jab and establishing lead foot dominance. Again, this is not going to fly against Errol Spence. See how Frankie Gavin has his hands by himself, right? He lets go. He's not holding on to Kell Brook. He's not controlling him, right? Classic, like, you know, C- or like B, like C- or D level fighter stuff. Not holding on to him, not controlling him, and you know, it doesn't matter whether that like last little hook lands or not. That it doesn't matter. The fact that he's letting Kell Brook throw that punch, because Kell Brook could have found another hole with it. Maybe he threw a body shot. Maybe Kell Brook circled out and took an angle and landed something else. There were like so many things that he could do there, and they were all things that Frankie Gavin was allowing him to do by not controlling him. But Errol Spence is going to be punching on those breaks. You know, I would not advise having any unreffed breaks with Errol Spence, unless you're the one with lead foot dominance and you use your right hand to push off of him and circle out. I would not advise any of that, because Errol Spence is gonna be fucking punching. He's gonna be roughhousing. He tries to make it a dirty fight. Well, he doesn't try. He does make it a dirty fight, and he's a brawler. He just wants to get close enough to you to land huge punches. So anyway, here we go. Kell Brook standing straight up. His opponent jabs him, and he counters the jab with the straight right hand. Not really setting the punch up at all, you know, but off the counter. You know, in real time, it doesn't look like it lands, but in slow-mo, it does. Kind of grazes him, I guess. And then Kell Brook does something really smart. Oh, look at, here you go. So look at, here's where he uses the shift. Boom, he lands-ish the hand, and he gets his forearm on his neck, right? And it stops him from eating the uppercut right there as he quells the distance. And he's controlling him with his forearm right there, and he's not really taking any punches back as he shifts in, right? So this is really interesting. Someone in the comments section of the Brook Algieri fight, they pointed this out, and I didn't know he did this in this fight at all. I hadn't watched it yet, but he put it out, and then I was like hypersensitive to it whenever it would happen in the fight, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And it's so funny because after he throws this punch, right, he has no real recourse, right? So he could throw that punch, and if he doesn't move his feet, Errol Spence or his opponent right here, Frankie Gavin, could just rock back like you would against a normal conventional fighter and throw his straight left, right? So this is the equivalent of like bodying up to your opponent, but if you just body up with your opponent and you remain in your orthodox stance against their left-handed stance, you're going to be, you'll have like lead foot dominance, right? But you're not going to do anything to close the distance to their left hand, right? So if we go back, where was it? I think it was right here. I think it was this one right here. So look at their body position right here. If he didn't get a hold of Frankie Gavin's arm, Gavin could be grabbing around Kell Brook's left arm with his right arm and hooking it, like getting an underhook, like he did to Algieri, and he could just be wailing away with his left hand if Brook couldn't get a hold of it. And look at all that space there is by Kell Brook's body, right? There's nowhere really for him to punch against Gavin, right? But he's completely open to a lot of shots. But using this technique, by shifting forward, putting his forearm into his neck, he's able to close all that distance and stop that awkward distance from being there, right? So it winds up being like they're just like two left-handed fighters or two orthodox fighters. And although it looks like poor technique, it looks sloppy, or it looks like whatever it looks like, it's actually really smart for as long as he's able to get away with it. The fact that he gets his forearm on his neck and he's able to like keep his opponent off balance, and granted, when you do stuff like that, oh god, 20 minutes in and we have 2 minutes, we're only 2 minutes into the fight. I'm gonna try to go a little bit faster, but the fact that he does that, is gonna stop him from taking any punches because he's controlling his opponent's head. Now, I don't know if that jab lands. It looks like it lands. Still countering. But notice again how the left hand that he throws, Kell doesn't get anything. Oh, he does get his glove on it, right? So it looks like he would be able to catch it. He misses his own counter, but he does something really good right here. See how he gets his arm onto Frankie Gavin's head? Stops him from using the lead foot dominance that he established, and stops him from being able to set up any offense. Really smart defensively, and definitely like finding a way to spoil Gavin's offense. Now, we do have to remember that Errol Spence's tools are way freaking sharper than this kid's. Way sharper. I do think that Kell Brook so far is going to be able to counter him, but if Errol Spence just walks through the counters, he's going to be a lot more he's going to be a lot physically stronger than this kid is, and maybe he's going to be able to like wrestle him a little bit to create the space that he needs to land his left hand when they're kind of in this clinch right here, right? Maybe because the fact that Errol Spence or that Kell Brook has his arm on top of him right now is one of the contributing factors to him not being able to land any punches. When he gets his arm under him, he needs to get his arm around his body, right? But then he needs to control. Then he needs to control his left hand. So anyway, moving on. So far, Kell Brook showing he has a really good defense for the lead foot dominance. And again, trying to counter punch. He misses that one. Gets on top of his head. Gets his glove up to block the left hand, right? But at the moment, he's not really doing a lot to set his punches up. You know, I don't know if he's just trying to counter only at the moment, but not doing a lot to set his punches up. Okay, here he goes. Starts working it. Shows him the jab a little bit, right? Touches his glove. And then, after he touches his glove, right, throws a straight right hand. Really smart. Gives him the double right hand. It's not, the second one's not really a punch. It's kind of just to show your opponent, you know, oh, there's another punch coming, and your opponent gets kind of worried or whatever, like a probing punch, gets him to react to it. Then he shifts forward, and now as Frankie Gavin moves back, Errol Spence, Kell Brook is in position to punch. So let's just watch that again. Boom. Shifts, tries to control his head. When he controls his head and Frankie Gavin moves it to go somewhere else, he throws a punch. Really smart, controlling him before to get him to react, even though he misses the punch. And off this punch, takes an angle right here and winds up getting tied up. But Kell Brook's showing like a lot of athleticism. So let's just watch that again, like in real time. Just boom, boom. After the uppercut, controlling his head, right? Controlling him so he can't throw punches back. He's already out of position. And then they tie up a little bit. Again, ducks down, and then disguises the right hand, right? He does a good job there of disguising it with the head movement, boom, and then when he slides over to the left, pretty smart. And then, as he goes for the body shot, look at that. That's exactly what Errol Spence is going to need to do all night long. He's really going to need to work on timing that and making sure that he utilizes that so that he can discourage Kell Brook from using that tactic. Because so far, Kell Brook has used it really effectively against Frankie Gavin. Again, jab, counters the jab. I don't know what he was doing exactly with this hook, though. I guess it does go over his arm, but he does miss it. But baiting the counters so that he can counter his counters, really smart. And I want you to pay attention to Kell Brook's active guard right here. He's moving his head a little bit. He's shuffling his hands forward a little more. It's not a lot. It's really subtle. But it means that Gavin doesn't know when to throw a punch because he has to figure out the timing, right? Whereas Errol Spence, he's always just shuffling forward from his hips, right? And his head basically stays in the same spot. That's why he's going to be, I think he's going to be a little bit easier for Kell Brook to hit. And the less work your opponent has to do to set up his punches, the worse shape you are, the worse shape that you're in. But right here, this is really good from Frankie. They get close in. Again, Kell Brook selling out to land that punch. I don't even know if he landed it, and then taking a body shot. Let's actually take a look and make sure he lands the punch. Oh, it goes for a body shot. That's so weird that you would do that. For Kell Brook's sake, let's just pray that he never does that against Errol Spence, because Errol Spence will probably just knock him out. That's like a really reckless and terrible punch for him to throw. And that's going to hurt him a lot if he winds up doing that. But then, you know, does some good stuff on the inside right here, catching him with that hook and then taking a step back. But he's still in his opponent's lead foot dominance, right? He's still in that circle of danger. So this is going to be something that he really needs to work on, right? Even though he lands that shot, you know, is it fair to say that he's not controlling his opponent on the way out because he's fighting Frankie Gavin, right? Is that fair to say? I didn't think it was fair to say that Errol Spence was being reckless because he was only fighting Chris Algieri. So no, it's not. You always have to have a respect for boxing. And Kell Brook, he needs to work on that a little bit. Ooh, he gets caught with a shot right there. Just kind of walks in, misses his counter, and when he misses it, he gets his arm very intelligently onto his neck again, the Floyd Mayweather-esque thing. Let's watch that in real time. Yeah, it's weird because it looks like he was about to throw a right hand, but then he kind of stops his own punch like really quickly. So it's debatable whether it was even a punch, but gets the break, doesn't take any damage after eating that shot. But again, showing that he's trying to counter. Crosses in, lands the second punch, and then gets his arm in between his head and his shoulder. Really smart. Ooh. Frankie Gavin trying to toss him a little bit. And the body shot. Now, this is a shitty punch from Frankie Gavin. He's really going to hurt his arm if he throws punches like that. But Kell Brook's showing that he's not really prepared for the body shot, right? He does a good job of not dipping down and moving into the head control or head quote-unquote control that Errol Spence would throw when the jab comes, but he just eats the body shot. So figuring out a way to deal with that is going to be something that Kell Brook needs to worry about, because he's taken a decent amount of body shots in this round so far. Counters the jab, kind of hits him on the back of the head, kind of, and then goes into head control. And now Frankie Gavin kind of pulling a Chris Algieri right there. And look at that. Really smooth right there. Really slick. Holds his head. Not really, kind of, you know. And then on the way out, catches him with an uppercut. That's some really good footwork. I think, like, their athleticism in that department, Errol Spence and Kell Brook, I think it's very, very even. You know, Errol Spence did show that he's got some really sharp pivots and a really good mind for setting up his power shots off of those angles and stuff. But Kell Brook has also shown some pretty good athleticism in that department too. And here he is, again, leading with the straight right hand, touches him with another one as he steps forward, and then misses the left hook. Just, you know, kind of dominating this guy, actually. If you're, like, watching it as a fight. I know I'm kind of, like, breaking down a little bit too much, so we're just going to kind of go through this. Again, his opponent gets one jab off, and then he throws his own jab and gets on top of him, and now there's no offense to be made, really. Frankie Gavin should be taking a second after he takes that first jab, because he knows that Kell Brook's kind of trying to latch onto him. And then once he's in this position, he should be looking to punch, you know, and not smother his own work, but punch with his left hand. And that's something that Errol Spence is definitely going to do. So Kell Brook needs to work on tightening that defense up a little bit when he's doing that. That was good. Jabs him, knows the counter is coming, catches him with the hook, controls him as he takes the angle, and then catches him with the right hand. Really smart, really quick, you know. Oh, and does the same exact move one after the other. What happened there? Let's see. trying to counter him again. And now, I think their feet must have gotten tangled. Let me look at their feet. Kinda, not really. Frankie Gavin, you know, maybe just not the greatest athlete, you know, doesn't have the sharpest tools. Because once he's in this position, he should just pivot out and beat Kell Brook to the line, right? Because he gets there first and throw some punches. And that's something that Errol Spence can definitely do. That was interesting. Throws the jab, controls his head, and then pivots out. That's exactly what you should be doing when you throw your jab and you miss it, you know, like, or somebody gets under it. You should pivot out like that and reset. There shouldn't be all this quote-unquote infighting where you hold the guy's head down or you grab them so that they can't get position on you. But anyway, Kell Brook showing that most of his offense is predicated off of the lead right hand that he only kind of sometimes sets up. He sets it up with some upper body movement. He sets it up off of his hand control. He'll touch like he's going to jab. He'll touch your glove, make you think a jab is coming, and then throw a right hand. That is some very sneaky stuff. You don't see many fighters doing that. Although most fighters only exhibit hand control in orthodox versus southpaw fights. But also not really setting his jab up. He always commits to his jab. He does a little bit of feinting, or like probing rather, but not a lot of feinting from Kell Brook. So he's kind of open to counters, and we definitely see that he's open to the body shot when he unloads his right hand. And because of the fact that he just explodes into it, and he's not probing, he's not setting it up really, except with a little bit of head movement, like very minor setup stuff. Kell Brook or Errol Spence is going to have a good time. He may have a good time timing that right hand and slipping to the inside of Kell Brook and throwing a left to the body or even just a left uppercut. Because Kell Brook also does have his left hand up pretty well to block the right hook. So I think that the only recourse for him there is to just move back or to throw a body shot. But so far, it's looking like it's going to be a pretty good fight between them. A lot of like little battles for dominance and stuff. But Kell Brook is going to need to work on controlling them on the inside because sometimes he's pretty open for those big shots. And while he's holding on to Spence, Spence is going to be punching. He's not going to be no Frankie Gavin. Errol Spence is definitely going to be throwing some hard shots. We'll see, I guess, in the next round if Kell Brook starts setting his punches up a little more. So far against, you know, like a D+ level fighter or C- level fighter, he hasn't really had to. He can just rely on his athleticism. But yeah. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever. And yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks, guys.